Hello, it's Rebecca here from Precious Pages Papercraft, and today I'm going to be designing a layout for Peartree Cutfiles, and I'm going to use two files from the April release. So the first one is Elliot's Paper Aeroplanes, and how cool is that? I love this file so much. And this is the second one here, it's the cloud borders. And with the cloud borders I'm going to use it in a slightly different way. So I've cut Elliot's Paper Aeroplanes onto plain white cardstock, so that will be my background piece of paper, so I've cut it directly from my background. And I've pulled out Shimelle's Field Trip collection, which is one of my ultimate all-time favourite collections. I've still got some left, thankfully, so I'm going to be using that today. And I'm going to use this cloud cut file as a stencil, so you can see there the look I'm going for. I had a bit of a practice before sitting down to do my layout. I wanted to make sure it would look right before applying it straight to my background, because if it went wrong or didn't look right, I'd have had to have cut the file all over again, and I don't want to be doing that. So I did have a play off camera just to make sure I liked the way it was going to look, and I really did. So what I'm doing is using it as a stencil. I've got a makeup blending brush here that I use for my ink pads, and I've got a distress ink in Salty Ocean, and I'm just literally rubbing the ink on, overlapping the top of that stencil to give some colour to my background. And as you can see, it's leaving the imprint of the clouds, and then as I move the stencil and overlap it and move it down, it gives the background a really cool three-dimensional look. I've had to put a bit of A4 paper behind my cut file at the moment, just so that I don't end up brushing ink all over my desk. So the gaps you can see that look a bit odd, it's a bit hard to tell on the camera, that's where the paper aeroplanes are going to sit. So that's why there's no colour in those bits. Now I'm just working my way down the page, overlapping those, doing the ink darker in some areas and lighter in other for a bit of variation. I really love how this has turned out. Now, confession time, I didn't have any photos to work with this cut file, but I was so desperate to use it. So I took the opportunity to have a morning with my son making paper aeroplanes, and then as it was a lovely day, we headed out into the garden to play with them, and I made sure that I got some photos to scrap on this layout so that it gave me the opportunity to use this file, because I just absolutely love it. I think it's brilliant and such a playful, fun layout. So yeah, really glad that I got the opportunity to grab some photos of us playing around in the garden. So I'm almost done with my background here, and that's literally all I'm going to do for the background. I was tempted to bring in a couple of other shades of blue for some variation, but I didn't want the background to be too busy, because the patterned papers I'm going to use to back my aeroplanes are quite busy from this collection, so I didn't want it to be kind of too much to look at on the page. So I've just stuck with one shade of blue, and although it does kind of look busy, once everything's back on top of the page, it actually ends up looking quite subtle, I think. So I've picked this pattern paper out to back my complete layout with. So it's from the 12 by 12 paper pack. So it's foiled, because I think the individual papers from this collection weren't foiled, it was only the collection pad. So it's a navy blue, and it's got kind of rockets and spaceships and things like that on it. I think it might have some constellations, I can't remember, but they are silver foiled, so it looks really cool behind my layout. And then I've pulled out this other sheet here that I'm going to use to back the paper aeroplanes, but I'm only going to use the blue and green areas for this. So that's why I'm kind of spacing the aeroplanes out quite weirdly, just so that I could purely get the correct colours that I wanted behind the aeroplanes. And I'm just sticking those down with PVA glue, and then I can go around with my scissors and cut those out. So that's how my layout is looking at the moment. I've got my background and my aeroplanes done, and I love how this is looking at the moment. Love the direction it's going in. It's just so much fun. So I'm adding some white behind my photos. They're both 3x4, and because I print them on 6x4 paper, I never have space for a white border, so I'm just adding that on with white cardstock. And I've decided that I need a border around the outside of my layout, and I quite often do this with my layouts. It's kind of one of the signature things I do. I distress all my edges always, and I generally add a border to my page, and I just feel like it frames the layout really nicely. So I've just trimmed a tiny bit, I think it's about 1/4 inch off of each side of the layout there. I've done it off of all 4 edges to keep my cut file central, and then I'm running my edge distresser all along the edges there to distress the edges, and I love the look that gives on a layout. It adds so much texture and interest, and it just makes the layout look a lot less flat in my opinion. So I always distress my edges. Then I'm adding some double-sided tape to each side, and I'm going to stick that on top of the blue and silver foiled pattern paper. So I just peel a corner off, leaving the rest on. So I take one strip off completely at the bottom and then peel the corners off the others, and then it helps me line it up without it all getting stuck. In case it gets stuck in the wrong place or anything and I need to lift it back off, it makes it a lot easier. And I'm going to add some foam behind my aeroplanes to add some depth and dimension, have them popping off the page a bit, and gives it a lot more interest and actually makes it look like they're flying through the clouds a little bit more. And this is just everyday craft foam. It's adhesive on one side, so you just peel back the sticky and stick it down. It's from the kids craft section in the range. You get a pad of, or pack sorry, of all different colours. So I'm just adding that behind my aeroplanes. Now I'm just going to go through the collection, see what I've got that will work with this layout. As you can see, I've got quite a lot of this collection left, which is surprising because I've made so many layouts with it. But I think I got 2 sheets of a lot of the papers, and I definitely know I got 2 packs of the ephemera. So it's keeping me going, thankfully, because I think I'll be a bit gutted when I get through all this collection. So it's just great, especially for kind of like little boy layouts that I do quite often. So yeah, I think I might cry a little bit when I run out of this collection. So I'm just going through and picking out some bits. At the moment it's looking like I've got blues and greens, so I want to bring a few pops of red in for a bit of contrast. And so I'm adding that strip along the bottom, kind of like a ruler, and then I've pulled the rocket out and a couple of other bits. I don't end up putting them all on. Those circles you can see there that look like pie charts, they're fussy cut from one of the papers. I used them on, I think it was one of my layouts for Paper Maze, and I had a few left over, so rather than bin them, I've kept them because, like I say, I love this collection and don't want it to run out. Now I'm just having a bit of a play with things, just seeing where I want them to go. I've got my photos and custers down on the left at the moment. I do end up moving those in a minute because it was looking very heavy on that side and it just didn't seem like it was the right place for my photos to be. So I want to add a little bit more of kind of a red colour behind them. So I've come back to this patterned paper and I'm just going to mount my photos on it to add some of that red behind. And not content with one layer, I decided to add a second one as well, just to bring in a bit more of the blue and green. It contrasts really nicely against the red, and a couple of the embellishments I've pulled out have got the blues, greens and reds in, so Just going to use a bit of this paper. Almost stuck it over a hole there. That would have been a bit of a weird shape once I'd cut that out. Obviously trimmed some leaves off for another layout at some point. And obviously it's me, so I'm distressing all the edges of these paper layers as well. Now you notice I'm using a edge distressing tool. If you don't have one of these, the blade of some scissors will work equally as well. Some lovely lady sent me a message recently asking for some advice on it. You can use the blade of your scissors. If you have a look at my earlier videos on YouTube, you'll notice that I used to use scissors. It's only recently, the last few months, I've changed to a distressing tool, and that's only because I was making my favourite pair of scissors really blunt by distressing everything. So this is where I decided to change the position of my photos, and I didn't want to cover up that green aeroplane at all. I really wanted him on my layout. So I'm going to move him over to the left, reposition him there. There wasn't a cut out space for him there, but he's going to be raised up on foam and you never know. So I just felt like my photos worked much better over that side of the layout. So just quickly moved that paper aeroplane, and then I'm distressing the edges again of all of my embellishments, and I will start getting things stuck in place and committing so that there is less faffing going on. I find that if I don't stick things down, I look at it and I'm unsure and I faff and I move things. Whereas if I just say, right, no, make a decision and stick it down, I then move on really easily and I stop looking at things. So I am trying this year to be much better at just committing to sticking and less faffing. And it's working really well actually. My layouts are coming together a lot quicker. Just need to be brave and tell myself just to stick it down. So there you go, I've stuck my photos down and it's covered up that hole where the paper aeroplane was, so we wouldn't even know now. So that's nicely covered up, and I'm just trying to just piece my bits of ephemera around my photos in some sort of clustering, sticking again to the blues, reds and greens where I can. So I don't think I add much more now at this point other than my title. This layout actually came together really quickly. I think it was probably less than an hour, which is really good for me because I'm a very slow scrapper. Really slow, like painfully slow. But it was just one of those files that as soon as I saw it in the release, it just screamed out to me and I just couldn't wait to get it on a page. So really glad I've used it, and I'm really happy with this, how this layout turned out. Kind of had it pictured in my head, and it kind of worked on paper, which I'm really pleased about. So I'm going to add my title in. These are the thickers that came with this collection. You get a set in blue and red, so I've gone with the red to add a bit more of that in. And then finally I'm just going to add this rocket. I've added foam behind my photos and stuck that down so the rocket wasn't sort of sliding under, so I do have to cut him in half. Of course I've kept the other half because you never know when you might use that. So yeah, I literally don't bin anything from this collection. So I've gone with Aim High for my title, and then I've got these puffy stickers from the collection as well. I'm just adding a few of the dots, they're almost like enamel dots, just to spread a bit more colour around the background. And then I just finish off by hand drawing a little doodled border around the edge just to tie it all together. And that is my layout finished. So thank you very much for joining me today. Please do remember to head over to the Peartree Cutfiles Facebook group if you're not already a member. You'll find weekly freebies, and we have a monthly crop at the end of the month, and obviously loads and loads of inspiration. So if you're not already a member, please do pop on over, and keep an eye on the website because there are some exciting things coming for May. I'm not going to say any more, but just keep an eye out. So thanks very much for joining me, and I'll see you next time.